Greetings, family. Coming back at you with another episode, another segment, broadcasting on behalf of the number 13, Signs, Astrology, and don't forget the .com. On this particular episode, I'm going to discuss a deity that's very special to me. Not that the other deities aren't special to me, because they are, but this deity is special to me in a different way. I'm going to discuss Osiris. I've discussed Thoth. I've done a lot of videos channeling Thoth, but now it's time to discuss and channel Osiris. This is a perfect time to do this particular episode or segment because we're getting ready to go into the Osirian energy. We're getting ready to go into the Osiris or the Asari or the Asar energy, because the Asar energy is associated with Capricorn. And today is the last day of Sagittarius, and tomorrow, which will be January the 20th, will mark the first day of Capricorn. So it's a perfect time, beautiful time, ladies and gentlemen, for us to really get into understanding this magnificent deity. Now, this deity is special to me because many of you have heard me talk about this. This deity is the deity that represents my grandfather. And many of you out there, you know who my grandfather is. I'm not going to talk about him and make him public who he was, but those people that know me and know a little bit about me, you know who my grandfather was or is. My grandfather is Osiris. He channeled the energy of Osiris, and he walked the path and walked the walk of Osiris, a king. So Osiris was a king. And it's important that we understand him and the lessons that he came to teach. Why? Because we are going slowly but surely into, as males, we have to move into the Osaru type of energy. This is why I named one of my seeds, or one of my creations, Osaru. And those people that know me know what I'm talking about. Because I value this name, and I understand that this name is going to be a secret name and a sacred name that people can call on, and a deity that people can invoke as we get deeper into this shift, or what some people call this feminine energy, or this shift of energy and consciousness. And for us males, even though it's feminine energy, there are certain deities that we are to fashion ourselves after based on this new energy. And Asaru or Osiris is one of them. Now, when I talk about this feminine energy, this is not to give women a pass, because somebody was kind of asking me this question, like, or kind of saying this on Facebook. We were kind of just having this discussion. It really wasn't a question, but somebody made a statement and said a lot of women are using this feminine energy as a crutch to say, well, it's the feminine energy, so I shouldn't have to do certain things because this is the time of the woman. This is the time for me to kick back. No, it's the exact opposite. See, the feminine energy represents the time where it's time for women to sit on the throne. It's time for you to get to work, woman. It's time for you to step up. The patriarchal energy represents when women kick back and, men take care of everything and women just kind of stay out the mix. No, it's not time for that. So this means that you are now responsible. Really? This is no meal ticket. This is no free pass. This is no free lunch ticket. This is no food stamp. This is not child support. It's time for you, that woman. I know a lot of women may get mad, like, what? Child support? You guys got to pay that if it don't work. Like, well, that's based on the court system. There's ways around that. I'm not going to cover that here, but there's ways around that. I mean, a man should do his duty and take care of his child. But child support is an agreement between a man and the court system. It has nothing to do with the man and the woman. But back to my point, it's time for you to get on the throne, woman. So when I talk about the feminine energy and principle, I'm going to do another video on it because I got to re-explain it again. Know that I'm not discussing this from a perspective of trying to bail women out or let women off the hook. No, I'm trying to help the woman to take her throne and the man to understand what he is supposed to do. So Osaru, he represents a deity that men should pattern themselves after. He's very important because men lately, before this feminine energy really came in, we have been known to be, we're supposed to be the warriors and, you know, basically the fighters, and a lot of, you know, like men, it was really kind of laughed at. You were called like a nerd if you were to read a book, or if you were to know, if a man knew how to type or something like that, knew how to do office work, that was like some soft type of shit or something to that effect. But now with this new Osiris energy coming in, and this feminine energy that's coming in, really Osiris and deities like him, like Thoth, these are the deities that men are going to have to begin to pattern themselves after if you want to survive in this shift. That reptilian, lower control base energy is dying. Men, you're going to have to become thinkers now. And it's not that you're not going to be a man, because I want to discuss what, you know, Osiris's downfall. Osiris did have a downfall. So it's not that wars are not going to be fought, because they are. There's going to be a group of men that try to fight. There's going to be a group of Satuk or Set types, because, you know, Set was the murderer of Osiris. I'm going to go into the story just to kind of break it down for people that never heard it. But Set was the murderer of Osiris. So there's going to be a group of males that is part of the Brotherhood of Set that wage war against Osiris. But this is why these new males have to learn the mistakes that Osiris made, so you won't make the same mistakes he made and get murked by these warriors or these Set worshippers or these Anakites is what I call them. These group of males that are controlled by reptilians that want to control and dominate people and force people through physical means to do shit. So you got to become a thinking man, become a ninja, and outthink him. I'm going to get into the story so you can understand Osiris. Now, it's interesting, before I get into the story, it's interesting that like all of these stories in Egypt, because people always ask me, why do you choose Egyptian deities all the time? Why not talk about, you talk a lot about Vedic astrology, why not talk about the Hindu deities? And I'm going to get to talking about Hindu deities. Like I was telling one of my clients, I'm still researching Hindu deities. I'm still working with them. I don't like talking about deities unless I have worked with them and have an understanding of really totally who they are on many levels. So I do have understanding of a lot of the Indian deities, because I have a lot of past life karma with India, so I understand it. It's in my DNA, but I'm not prepared yet to reveal these things to the public. But, however, when I'm talking about these Egyptian-based deities, if those that are intelligent and those that are good at corresponding different deities with other deities, you'll be able to figure out based on your culture who Osiris is and your system of deities. Every culture had their own system of deities. I choose Egypt for a reason, because on the back of our dollar bill, we have a pyramid that looks like the Great Pyramid. It's a reason for that. It's a legal reason for it, but then there's also a spiritual reason for it. So what I'm going to do here is prove that there's a connection between the West and Egypt. There's always been a connection between South America and Africa. Egypt is in Africa, by the way, for those people who didn't realize, not in the Middle East, it's in Africa. So there's always been a connection between South America and Africa. And when you start to research the deities in South America, you'll see this. There is a deity by the name of Thunupa Viracocha, and I have to look down to make sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Thunupa, Thunupa Viracocha, Viracocha, that corresponds with Osiris or Sardu. When you're reading about Osiris, actually his Greek name. Sardu was his Egyptian name. So when you're reading about Osiris or Sardu and you're reading about the Thunupa Viracocha, know that you're reading about the same deity in essence. Sometimes the stories may change and you may get a different perspective because this is how that particular culture was taught about that deity. But the similarities are the same. You have to ask yourself why. How could the South Americans that probably was supposed to never have had a connection with the Egyptians, how in the hell did they get a deity that was similar to a deity that was in Egypt or in Kemet? How in the heck could that have happened? I mean, they have so many so many correlations. They correspond in so many different ways. They both were great civilizers. They both were conspired against. They both were struck down or attacked. They both were sealed in some form of a container or a vessel. They both were cast into water. They both drifted away into a river. And they both eventually reached a sea. Very interesting. So how in the heck two cultures that were supposed to never have met each other, how did they get these stories? It's because these stories came from the gods. And namely Enki. See, Enki, he lived in Africa and he eventually moved into South America. And he gave them the history from Africa over in South America. He was responsible for teaching them that. It was Enki, the god Enki, that was responsible for teaching them the same stories and bringing this culture. And how was he able to do this and move around like this? Enki was supposed to walk the earth over 50,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago. They didn't have cars. I mean, let them tell it. They didn't even have a way of knowing about each other. It's because it was a global economy, beloved. It's always been a global economy on this planet for a long period of time, and the gods regulated this economy. This is why you'll find artifacts that belong over in Africa. Like you'll find tobacco that's from over here in South America and in Americas, and you'll find these pharaohs buried all the way over in Africa with tobacco. You'll find marijuana that's from over here, and you'll find these pharaohs buried with marijuana all the way over in Africa. You can do your research. I'm not making this stuff up. Go ahead and check out Ancient Aliens and all these different episodes, and you'll see that I'm telling the truth. There's a lot of books out there to talk about this. This is why. See, over here in America, this was really in the Americas, which includes Canada, North America, and South America. This was actually called Lower Egypt. See, when you get into understanding Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, most people, they look over into Egypt and they think, well, Upper Egypt was basically like the area of like the Sudan, and then Lower Egypt is where the Giza complex and all of that was at. And that's, that was Lower Egypt. That's not the case. Lower Egypt actually, see, this is the Egypt of the West. This is why we have a pyramid on the back of our dollar bill over here, because they're trying to tell you a secret. We got the mandates to settle on this land from over in Kemet. That's right, from over in Egypt. They gave us the mandates and wrote us out a mandate, a land mandate, and we were able to settle this land over in Kemet. And this is why the great scholars, they put on the Great Seal. A pyramid is on the Great Seal. It's a reason for that. Then they have an eagle or a phoenix on there, because one day it would look like the Egypt would die, but it would resurrect itself again over here in the West. So this is the Egypt or the Kemet of the West. This is what you would call Lower Egypt. And Osiris is very important in understanding that. This is why Osiris, you have a version of Osiris over here in Thanupa, Viracocha, and a version of Osiris, which is Asar, over in Egypt. This is why. So who was Osiris? What is the story of Osiris? Osiris was a very popular deity. He was the deity that a lot of women liked him. He was favored by women. He wasn't a womanizer. You don't read about him sleeping around with a lot of women, but he was favored by a lot of women. He was favored by a lot of people in general. Why? Because Osiris was a thinker and a philosopher, and he started a movement and a community that wasn't based on forcing people to his way. He was the king that persuaded people, and he studied the psychology of people and got them to walk his path and to come over to his way and to come up under his kingdom by persuasion. This is what makes him so popular. This is why he was so different. And he set up a legal system or a law system, a system of law and codes, and everybody had to live by this system of law and codes. He did not deal in sacrifice. And this is the same thing with the Nupa Viracocha. He did not see before him the Egyptians, and you read about the Dogons and all of them, they dealt with sacrifice. They sacrificed things to the gods. Humans, even animals, they would slaughter something. They would basically, a sacrifice is, and I got to do a video on it, but real quick, a sacrifice is when you use something to basically take the place of another. So a sacrifice would be like, say for instance, instead of me paying my taxes off, I just go sacrifice somebody else and take their money and use their money to pay my taxes off with. That's a sacrifice. That's essentially what they do in blood sacrifice. So Osiris, he made everybody accountable through a system of laws and codes. And he raised up a council of 72 men and women. And a lot of people didn't like this. And he made the people accountable to the codes of the gods. He made people responsible for their actions based upon law. Osiris was able to bring down and channel the universal laws and make them applicable to the earth. And he put the universal laws on people and on humans. And he took away a lot of the sacrificing and a lot of the lower reptilian based rituals. And a lot of the tribes didn't like that. So what happened was when Asari went out of town, he went to another land, because he was teaching this all over. He was going all over the world. He was a traveler. He was actually an ET himself, if you really understand it. But he was what you would call a demigod, which was a half man, half human. Half extraterrestrial. So he went to another land to teach this doctrine and to set up this system. And when he came back, his brothers conspired on him. Mostly men. And these were the brothers of Satuk, the brotherhood of Satuk. This is why they say Set. He was the chief. And he took his brotherhood and he conspired on him. And he put together a magical ritual or a play to where he invited Osiris to a dinner. They was having fun. And it was like a ritual at the end of the dinner where every man had to try to get into this coffin that they built. And nobody could fit into this coffin. Every man had to go and partake in this ritual. It's like if I come to your dinner party, right? And you say, we're going to play a game. It's kind of disrespectful if you don't play the game with me, right? Like if you say, I don't want to play. So Osiris, he had to play the game with him. They invited him to a dinner. He came. It was a ceremony. All these men tried to get in the coffin and they couldn't fit. So when it was his time to get into the coffin, and when it was his turn, the coffin fit him perfectly. Seemed like the coffin was built for him. Interesting. So he got into the coffin, laid in it, and they put the top on the coffin, sealed it up real quick, and they threw the coffin into the river, and basically his body went off sailing into the river, down the current. He eventually went into the ocean, or into a lake, I should say, and then that lake eventually led into a river. It was really the Nile River is where they put his body in. And his body went all the way down the Nile River. And it disappeared. They thought that he was going to sink. See, that's the part where they messed up at. They thought that he was going to sink. But he didn't sink when he was inside of the coffer or the coffin. He didn't sink. He floated. And he was able to go down the river. And eventually his sister, which was actually his wife at the same time, found him, who was Aset. And she was a magician. And she was able to conjure up and do a magical spell. And she was able to bring Osiris back to life long enough. Well, actually, they cut his body into 14 pieces, too. I forgot about that part. And scattered them around, because they found the coffin first. So she found the coffin. Excuse me, I forgot about that part. They cut his body into 14 pieces, scattered it around the jungle, wherever they were at. So she had to bring back all his members and all his body parts. And she found every piece with the exception of his phallus. So she had to sew a phallus on. She had sex with him. This is why when you see pictures of Osiris, you see a picture of an erect phallus or erect penis. Because she had to sew the erect penis on, and she brought him back to life. He became king of the Underworld. And he conceived a brotherhood called the Brotherhood of Hedu. It's called Iowas by Aleister Crowley. And we are in the time of the era of Iowas. This is why Osiris is important. We're leaving the era of Set. See, Set no longer has any power. See, all of that Anakite, I'm going to do a video on the Anakites. These are a group of beings. All of that reptilian-based type of control that's on the planet right now, we whacking y'all. Those guys are getting 86'd by the Brotherhood of Heru. And I'm going to go into that in a minute. So she conceived Heru. But how was she able to do this? Because those people that knew Isis, she wasn't supposed to be initiated into certain magical circles. See, if you really get deep into the story, they don't teach this publicly in a lot of the books, but when you understand it from the Book of the Dead and you get deep into it, you'll find out that she had to break a code. She wasn't initiated into certain sister circles. So she wasn't supposed to know certain things or certain magic. And everybody was wondering, how did she do this? She wasn't, see, Aset was like a woman that, say for instance, she wasn't in the sorority. She wasn't in the orders of the day. She was just like a regular woman. So they never thought that she was going to be able to bring her husband back to life. They figured she didn't have the knowledge to do it. But she was able to do it. How? Because she usurped. She actually broke the code and went past the sororities and went past the fraternity, the fraternal orders even, and went directly to Anu, or what you would call Ra, which was her father. She went directly to him and got the magical spell from him on how to resurrect Asari or Osiris. And she was able to bring him back to life. And she was able to have a child with him. But what really happened was that she linked up with a group of beings. They don't tell you this part. See, she was connected with the Pleiadians. And she had a connection, an astral connection. She was a part of what you would call a cosmic order. She wasn't a part of the earthly, mundane orders that were regulated by the Brotherhood of Satut. See, he was a warrior, so he controlled all the earthly orders. You got to go back to my last video, which was Group Think, or my second to last video, the video before the last video, which was Group Think, to understand what I mean about earthly orders and then celestial orders. So she was a part of a celestial order that was channeling Pleiadian energy. And the Pleiadians helped her to get to Ra. He was shocked. I mean, she broke the code. It's kind of like she wasn't supposed to be able to see him. She didn't. It's kind of like certain people can't really meet the president unless you're initiated, or unless you're this certain person, or you may be involved in some certain order, or unless you're just something special about you. Just not anybody can meet the president, right? Well, it's the same thing with Ra, or some people call him Anu in certain cultures. Just not anybody can meet Ra. In order to meet Ra, you had to be pretty high up on the totem pole, and she was able to break this code and go and meet him directly, even though she wasn't initiated. He gave her the secret spell to bring her husband back to life. She eventually had Eru. So that's the story of Osiris. Now, what does it mean by when it talks about him being put into a vessel and he was supposed to sink? See, this is really going into law, believe it or not. This is going into, when you translate it into the modern times, this is going into banking. You see, banking is based upon the laws of the water. And remember, I told you that Osiris was kind of like a lawyer. So he set up a system of laws to regulate humans' affairs, to deal with, I mean, they had money in Egypt. They had a means of exchange. To basically set up a system of laws so that they could live their life. And they had to pay taxes to the gods. So instead, before that, when they didn't have their tax money or something like that, they would go and set up little rituals or whatever before Osiris came on the scene, and they would just sacrifice somebody and use that money to pay their taxes off. Going back to how I started the video, so he got rid of that. Osiris got rid of that, and he came with a system to where everybody was responsible for themselves based upon law. So he was a king, and they were upset. They didn't like that. His barons or people that were up under him, they didn't like that at all, buddy. So they was like, we're going to sacrifice him. We're going to eventually get this guy, and we're going to use him as a sacrifice so that we can pay off this money that we owe the gods. See, that's what the story is really talking about. They don't tell you, these are the secrets in the story. They owe money to the gods. They have to pay homage to the gods to exist. In Egypt, it was understood that you living in the best society, an elaborate society that's connected with the Sirius star constellation, that's channeling all kind of energy. You have the best technology here in this society, but you have to pay taxes to these gods, and you have to pay homage to these gods. You have to pay, though, in whatever way that you have to pay or whatever. So he set up a way to where everybody was responsible for themselves to get rid of the violence and bloodshed, and they didn't like that because a lot of the elites and the people that were up under him, even though they were up under him as a king, they were elites, and they're like, why are we equal with these other people? And we gotta pay. They didn't like that shit. So they basically used Osiris. Osiris was kind of like a charity. So Osiris and Capricorn energy represents charities. And Osiris, he kind of like had a charity set up to where he already had money banked away with the gods in the banks for himself. And they knew that if they were to kill him, they would be able to take his money. They wanted to take his money and take basically his wife's inheritance. She wasn't initiated into these orders. So that's what the real story is talking about. So they decided to put him, they decided to do this ritual or whatever, sacrifice him, to make a long story short, so that they could bring back sacrifice again. Essentially is what it's about. So the story of Jesus even kind of goes into the same story. Because Jesus was supposed to be the last sacrifice. But yet still people still doing them. So this Osiris figure represents a noble guy that figured out a way to where people could live in congruence with the gods, but at the same time they would be equal with men, and they would be able to pay their duties and their responsibilities to the gods, but at the same time they wouldn't set up any negative karma for men. Osiris kind of represented, when I talk about unlimited progress coming to this planet. See, we live on this planet and we have yet to experience unlimited progress. And Osiris, he came as one of the first gods. And same thing with through Nupa Viracocha. He was one of the first guys over on that side to set up this system of unlimited progress, because he was tired of seeing people murder people and do all of this stuff, because he knew that when they did that, this created negative karma, and this caused souls to keep coming back to this earth as a school, and we would never get to the next level, and we would never be able to shift the earth. So he wanted to see the earth shift. But the thing with Osiris is he didn't realize what he was dealing with. He was dealing with a bunch of ignorant humans. And this is where his son Horus came on the scene. This is what he represents. So Horus was a little bit smarter. See, Horus, he grew up and was raised by Nephthys. Once the magical ritual played out, he grew up in the house of Satut. So he grew up under the brotherhood of Set, or Satut. He was raised by Set's wife, Nephthys. She raised him. And she raised him and taught him all the dark ways of the Dark Lord. So he understood what the Dark Lords were capable of. So when it came time for him to rule, he was able to slay Satut. He was one of the people that were successful in overcoming the society of Satut. And the lesson in that is that Asari, he was too nice. He trusted people too much. Should have never gotten the damn coffin anyway, to begin with. Should have never played the game anyway. But he decided to play the game because he trusted him. He figured these were my servants, and he was a noble man. But when he came back and when he resurrected, see, they didn't kill him. They thought they was going to drown him. When they say they thought they was going to drown him, that means they thought they was going to drown him in debt. They thought they took all his money. He didn't have any money left. They drowned him. They robbed him, his family's estate. They took all the money. They thought he didn't have anything left. But he floated because he kept just enough money and had some money stashed away. And he left just enough knowledge to his wife to where she was able to do that magical ritual and that spell and connect with their father, who was Ra, and was able to resurrect and bring him back. And he became Lord of the Underworld. He became an immortal. And they never could kill him after that point. So that's what the story is really talking about. Why I bring this up now is because we're in the time of Capricorn. This is the era of Osiris. If you watch my video before this, this connects right with that video before this. We're in the time of the new moon. The new moon is in Capricorn. This is a new beginning. There's a lot of things are changing in this society if people are really paying attention. People, great big old companies that thought they never would be able to fall and that they were above the law, and big old gangsters that thought they was above everything, are now, the sword of justice is now chopping people's heads off, public figures and everything. That's right, justice is on the scene, and it's based on the feminine energy. So in order for men to exist in this energy, we have to take up the role and be like Osiris, or more like Heru, actually. Because we don't want to be dumb, because there's still going to be that man out there that wants to bring back the old law. So there's going to be wars that are going to be jumping off. There's still going to be that brotherhood of Set person out there that's like, nah, I don't like the fact that now I got to be equal with these damn mortals. Why don't we just get rid of this whole Osiris shit? And why don't we just bring back the law? Why don't we get rid of this Jesus thing? Because Osiris kind of represents Jesus. Why don't we get rid of it? Why don't we just murk him? Or why don't we just murk the idea of that and bring back the society the way it used to be? Where I could cheat, steal, and get away with things. But the thing is, you can't cheat Mother Nature. This is Mother Nature bringing this into effect. Mother Nature is represented by Aset. See, Osiris has been resurrected. So this is what Ayahuasca represents. And he incarnates into a mortal. When he's resurrected, after he's died, see, you already did that. You already murked Osiris. You've already murked a bunch of people. You already murked Martin Luther King. You already murked Noble Drew Ali. I could go on. You already got rid of Paul Revere. You already got rid of the founding fathers and the ideas that they set up. So you already did that. So you think it's going to happen again? It's not going to happen again. You can't do the same thing. The guys aren't ignorant. They're not going to let you do the same thing twice. So now this represents the second coming. This is when he comes back with a sword. This is kind of what I talked about in the More Fire video. Don't make me do a part 2. See, this is when he comes back with a sword, dripping with blood, and you're not going to get away with it this time because he saw what you did last time. Horus comes back. So that man that Osiris incarnates in, when he comes back, he incarnates into a mortal. Even though he exists in his position as a mortal and as ascended master in the underworld, as the king, still the king, Osiris is, he creates a beneficiary. And that beneficiary becomes Hedu. And that beneficiary learned from his aunt, which was Nephthys, who was the wife of Set, the Dark Lord, and he learned from his mother, Isis, who was the good woman, the noble woman that was married to Osiris. And both of those women taught him many lessons. So when he comes back chopping off heads, Jack, and you can't really get over on him. So that's what represents, this is kind of going into what America has done and what, you know, the West has done. If we really have went into the East and different nations and we have left them undeveloped on purpose and went and took from their resources and thought that we weren't going to never get that back. Went take it from the natives, take it from the Native Americans, take it from the so-called Africans or the Ghanaians, take it from those so-called South Africans, take it from China, getting them to build stuff for us for dirt cheap, and then we benefit. Meanwhile, we was partying and having a good time, and now we gotta work, and now we gotta pay back the monies that we owe. We gotta balance the debt ceiling. We owe 17 trillion some dollars, and now we gotta pay that money back, and we don't want to do it. We'd rather pass it off on our children, like they want to pass off their debts on Osiris. You rather pass it off on your children. Let them pay it. But the children are Horus. They're not Osiris. It's not going to work. So you're not going to be able to pass it off on them because the children, they're watching these videos and they know. And there's other people out here, truthers, that aren't afraid to stand up and talk like this. And they know that, nah, I'm not going to fall for that game this time, buddy. So now everybody's equal. Now everybody has to pay back what they owe. And now basically God's kingdom, what Christians would call the second coming, is happening. It's coming to earth. And a lot of the infidels and people like that don't like it. But you didn't know it had anything to do with money. So you thought it was all mythological. You thought it was all idealistic. You see, you thought that God's kingdom was going to be some guy coming down with legs. He was going to kill all the bad people that didn't believe in Jesus and didn't go to church. You didn't have anything. You didn't know it had anything to do with the extraterrestrials, the Anunnaki. You didn't realize that. So you didn't realize that this society and everything that you have set up, you owe them. I'm going to do more videos on that. That's who we really ultimately owe. We owe the Anunnaki. We got to pay homage or whatever because we owed them because of the fact that they gave us life. And really the fact that humans are even in existence right now is based upon a miracle. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not saying I'm siding with any extraterrestrial group, but I'm just telling you how they look at it. They look at it like, look, you wouldn't even be here. We created you just to be slaves and work the earth anyway. So a lot of humans, they got too big for their britches. So now they coming back and evening everything out with the sword of justice. And you get mad. See, people like Edward Snowden, he represents that. You got all these people on these message boards talking about we should kill Edward Snowden. You just want to see some bloodshed. You're not going to do it this time. See, if I was Edward Snowden, I had that pistol. You feel me? See, I'll be the gangster version of Edward Snowden. I had that pistol. You come with me tomorrow, you're going to do this and that. You the one that, he's balancing it out. These are these big old officials in big government talking about they want to get rid of Edward Snowden and he's violating the Constitution. You set up the NSA against the Constitution. The NSA is not constitutional. And I know people hate when I talk about this, but I can say what I want. I'm a national. I have freedom of speech, buddy. Freedom, the media can say what they want. See, it's the media that's keeping this stuff up. People in the media need to speak up. And say and speak the truth. And let people sign executive orders and do this stuff or whatever and just do what the fuck they want. This is not how things work. This is why you need to study Osiris. This is why I'm making this video, because this is what 2014 is about to be about. Osiris' body was cut up into 14 pieces. It's no coincidence that this is 2014. He's back. Except he's back in Heru. He's back in the youth. He's back in China. He's back in the underprivileged nations that you deprived. See, he came back on many levels, in people and even in nations. He's back in the form of women that you suppressed. So it's time for people to look at themselves now and stop looking on the outside and get mad and blaming other people, playing a victim. Victim mode is over, buddy. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this video down. Hope you learned something from this video. And until we meet again,